Hello, happy Sunday evening to you all. Welcome to the UpSet podcast. I am one of your hosts tonight, but we have the rest of the crew and a guest with us tonight. Hey, everybody.
Hey,
howdy.
Hey.
Hello.
How's it
Hello,
going?
boss.
Hey, that was good.
I want to start off by saying we are live. I know we have had a couple of pre-recorded shows over the last couple of Sundays. We are live and we are excited about interacting with all of you watching. So please share your comments on this particular subject that we're talking about today. But first, I do want, as you may notice, there's a new face here. And in the boxes, Pastor Marleno is not able to be with us tonight. And you're like, with a topic like this, we have to have another female to weigh in on this. And so
To rescue us.
yes.
That's right.
And so we have Pastor Daryl Hoy with us. Hi.
Welcome.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you for
Good to
having
see
me.
you.
Thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
I guess we can go ahead and get the introduction out of the way. Daryl, just for our audience, just share a little bit about yourself. Right now, I'll share it right now. She works as the communication director for the Office of Regional Conference Ministries, which is headquartered in Huntsville, Alabama. But tell us a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your background and kind of some of the things that you have done in ministry and otherwise.
Sure. I am started urban ministry in Baltimore, moved to Central States Conference where I was community service director, and I pastored in both Topeka, Leavenworth, and a few places, and then moved to be youth director, and went from Central States to Nevada, Utah as youth director. And now I'm here at the Office for Regional Conference Ministries as the communications director.
All right. Awesome. Thank you for
Nice.
being with us.
Right.
I look at Pastor Hoy and think she must have started all of this when she was about 8. She still looks as young as she ever did, I tell you.
Yes. And we're happy that you accepted our invitation to be here tonight. We're looking forward to the dialogue. So thank you for joining the UpSet this evening.
Thank
All
you.
right,
Great
guys.
topic.
Yes. Before we jump into that, though, kind of what's going on with you guys? I don't know if you're like me, but it wasn't until I got in my car, I think it was about 3:00, that I realized that's right. It was daylight savings time. Like we were supposed to stream, because I checked my phone and my watch for the time. So it didn't even faze me when I woke up. I didn't even realize we were supposed to stream forward. But
Yeah, but all the other clocks have to be changed,
Exactly.
the microwave, the clock on the dresser.
Right.
You know what it was like in the old days, Charles, when the video, your video recorder had the same time flashing all of the time because you just didn't feel like going through the changes.
Right. Exactly.
Not a VCR though. That's not Nick. That's not what you were talking about. A VCR.
No, in my day, we actually used to have small parakeets inside chiseling out pictures. That's how old we go back.
Meet the Flintstones.
Right.
I remember that. Yes.
I'm still looking at this war though. It's amazing what's happening over there. You just think that it was going to be called the 5-day war or the 6-day war, but it's still happening. And it looks like, China may be jumping in, or something. It looks like it's going to be bigger than what it is. We just still need to pray over it. Continue to pray.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's quite devastating. I mean, you see the footage, but and it's heartbreaking to see individuals having to go through that. But it would behoove, especially Americans, to really study the history of Russia and Ukraine and how they got to this point. Because it's easy for us to say, he's a bully, he's a tyrant, he just doesn't have anything else better to do but kill people. It's not that simple. It is a very complex situation there, and I dare say that the United States had a role to play, but we'll just leave it there. And then I'll say that the other part of this is that it has taken a lot of attention away from Yemen and Sudan and some of the other places where there's a lot of strife and a lot of dying and a lot of famine. That's kind of been, pushed to the back page, and it's just as devastating and perhaps even more devastating right now in those regions because of the fighting and all that's going on there. So we need to keep them all in prayer.
Yes.
I would add that one of the things that has been poking its ugly head up about this story is the fact that many of the reporters are making note of the fact that, this is not Africa. This is not the Middle East. This isn't some faraway place. These are Europeans. And the fact that the pain and the suffering of people who look like certain people seems to register with a greater level of gravity than the pain and suffering of when the Tutsis and the Hutus in Rwanda were struggling this way. I mean, people kind of viewed it like Wild Kingdom. Oh, look, the animals are killing each other.
Yeah.
Right.
But now they view it as a true humanitarian disaster. And we need to be aware of the fact that we are biased and prejudiced at times, even Black people.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That we
Talk
need
about
to
it.
be aware of that.
Absolutely.
That's so true. Sad truth. Sad truth.
Yeah, one of the things on my timeline that troubled me was what happened to Ryan Coogler in Atlanta. He went into a bank and wrote a discreet note that I wanted to, take out $12,000. Please don't talk about it out loud. Gave his ID. Somehow the cops were called and he was handcuffed. I'm pretty sure that wouldn't happen if he were a Caucasian brother, but it's just so sad to see that went down that way. But that's why I think it's important for us to bank Black. If you're a Black person, you should consider banking at a Black bank.
It should be noted that the bank manager and the bank tellers were all Black.
I know, Tally. I know.
I just thought I'd bring it up.
I know.
But
But
it's
Bank of America.
How much Black are you? Oh.
Bank of America, Tally.
Bank Black owned. Oh, okay.
Bank Black owned.
Willie and Sam's Financial Institution. Okay.
So we really have our biases too.
Yeah, that's
We do.
We absolutely do.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Did you all hear that our president Barack Obama has COVID?
Yeah.
Oh
I did
no, I
not hear
didn't hear that.
that.
Oh,
So we want
So
to
he
keep
got
him
the
in
booster.
prayer.
So, Tasha, let me just ask you a question as one of our producers. So the guest could just come in and add in this section.
yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, no,
Absolutely.
I just wanted to know if they were just going to jump in and add about Barack Obama.
Hey,
You
Pat,
invited me to the barbecue.
Pat, Pat,
Yeah,
check your bias.
Yeah, that's right. He's opening up some doors. We're gonna.
All right, here comes the show. Here comes the show. Here comes the show.
That's right. That's right. But that's good. All right, cool. Lots going on as always in our world, and here we are at the UpSet, bringing you another topic. We know that in the month of March it is Women's History Month, and just like we say with Black History, these months are developed because, of course, at least a group of people have seen fit that a certain group of people may not have always been recognized or giving their just due, and therefore a month has been set aside so that we can bring more awareness to the things that impact this particular group. And today we're dealing with her story, implicit biases for women in the workplace and the church. And of course, this is a topic. I mean, it has to be personal to me. I am a woman. I am in the workplace and I'm in the church, So this is a topic that we as a team, felt was important to cover. And when we look at the history of women in the workplace, I mean, to me, it was very humbling. I mean, a lot of times we look at things from our vantage point. I mean, I was born in the late 70s, so I look at the history from what happened from that point on. And I'm looking at how long women have had to kind of be in this fight just to be able to work and have equal pay, be able to even bring home their own money. I didn't even know that there was a time, or not realizing there was a time when women actually worked but couldn't even bring home their own paychecks. It's kind of hard for me to wrap my mind around. And I'm looking at history and all of these significant things that are happening, the acts that were passed that gave women the ability to even have equal pay, which didn't happen that long ago. I mean, this was like, 1960s or something that this act was passed. And I was looking at one statistic, I think it was from stacker.com, that said it will be, I think it was 2054 before women actually receive equal pay. Like, that's how much
Mercy.
backlog is there. 2054. I'm like, I'll be retired. You know what I mean? By the time it actually gets to this point. And so we're looking at women in the workplace and all the challenges that women have had to overcome. And then we're looking at women in the church. I was sharing with the team that when I was growing up, the thought of a female pastor or even a female elder was completely unheard of. I mean, I don't think anyone even talked about it when I was growing up. So just know that that was happening 30 years ago. And here we are now in 2022, and we're starting to see what we feel like are these significant changes. We're starting to see more female pastors. We're starting to see more females in leadership in the church. And sometimes we see these things and we're like, we're making progress. We're heading in the right direction. And then sometimes you hear some of the stories and experiences of women and you ask yourself, are we really making progress, or do we want to look like we're making progress? And so we want to kind of talk about some of these things today. Pat, thank you for, we know we're on.
We are live.
Yes, we're live. Thanks. But yeah, so we really want to delve into this. We have a couple of things we want to talk about, and then we have a story, something that we came across that we saw in Independence Today, that talks a lot about some of the things that we're going to be talking about. All right, so I want to put the first question out to you guys in the team. Now, guys, you're okay. This is a safe place. Derry, I want you to know that these guys, they're great guys. They support women.
Hold on a second. I have to get my tape recorder on. Go ahead.
And so, but I do want to ask the guys. I'm actually going to start the question with you guys. Does this matter to you guys? Like, honestly, like when you hear women's history and her story, Implicit Bias, do you feel like this is something that even really involves you? Do you kind of feel like, oh, let them fight their fight?
Yeah, I think, it may sound like a trite adage, but injustice anywhere can lead to injustice everywhere. I mean, if you're not careful, somebody will remove Pastor Hoy right from off this screen while we're talking. But the fact of the matter is, this wasn't, when I heard you say that when you were in 1979, when you were born, I was going, in the late 70s, you said you were born.
Yeah, right? But you're right, 79. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, that's when I was finishing up the seminary, and I realized how much older I am. But I remember here in the city of Philadelphia, there were two teachers, Charles, you know them, the Lawton twins.
Yes.
They were teaching, and there was a rule that a man would get what's called head of household pay in the Adventist church, head of household pay. And these two twin sisters lived together, and one of them filed for head of household. And they were told that neither one of them could get it. And they said, why? Because neither one of you is a man.
Wow.
And this is in my day. And so, it's still, it still makes my diaper itch when I hear something crazy like this, these kind of inequities. It bothers me to no end. And if a person can do the job, the person deserves full and fair pay.
That's right.
Right.
Go ahead,
Pat. No, you go first.
I was thinking about the same thing. I grew up, in a church that had no women elders at all. I mean, just recently, and when I say recently, I probably within the past maybe 5 years. Matter of fact, I'm not even sure if they do have elders. Maybe I should even think about that. This is where I grew up. And I think the difference for me is when you start to really notice it is when you have a daughter. I think, you don't really think about it. I'll be honest with you. You don't really think about it until even in this day, she's saying, hey, Dad, I can get this, but even the male counterpart is going to get that. And that made me say to myself, wait a minute, you went through this school the same way that everybody else went to school. And then you wake up to see that it's not fair. For me, it had to hit home for me to wake up.
That's right.
Well, I've always been not happy with the way our society handles it, and it's not just the United States; it's all over the world.
Yeah.
All over the world. I mean, like in Saudi Arabia. I mean, just recently, women were granted the ability to drive, to get a driver's license.
Yeah,
I'm talking about within the last few years here. And so I think there is a global attitude about women but only to specific kinds of men.
Mm-hmm.
You've got some men that it's not an issue. It really isn't an issue. But others, because of their weak egos and their ignorance, they, this nonsense still goes on. And in balance, I must say, that at least in the tech industry, because I follow the tech industry quite a bit, there are quite a few vice presidents, chief operating officers, chief, information officers, product, managers, white and black females that are prominent in those areas, and that's to be celebrated because that wasn't the case many years ago. But even now, when you see product launches for Apple or Google, they're bringing on stage during those keynotes black females, and they had females, but more specifically black females in these high tech positions. So in balance, I just want to celebrate the reality of that as well.
That's right.
Yeah. May I just throw this in really quick before we get really started, and that is. We have to recognize that even though that this is a male-led church, as most churches are, that it is to a large degree the women in other nations that are voting and maintaining a culture that says women are to be subservient. That's my first question. The second one is this: are we ready to acknowledge openly and theologically, forthrightly, that the Bible speaks with bias towards women? Because if we're going to say that God said it, and I believe it, and that settles it, then when you hear a text like, "A woman must learn in quietness and full submissiveness. I do not permit a woman to teach or exercise authority over men, but she is to remain quiet." When you read a text like that, you have to ask yourself, what will that mean to you today? Are we prepared to say that the Bible speaks with a bias? And therefore, and thank you for joining us for our last program.
Well,
Yes.
Hey, listen, I saw Daryl coming for you. So
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm gonna let Daryl have this one
No,
because
I think Daryl's on my side on this.
because I'm sure this is not the first time you've heard that scripture, Daryl. I'm sure.
It surely isn't. And, if we're going to apply that scripture to the church, we also have to apply that scripture to school. When I talk to people about school, almost everyone has had female teachers. And when you ask them who their favorite teacher is, it's usually Miss So-and-so, so we do have to look at the Bible through the lens of today and of yesterday, and come to the conclusion that, and especially if you read the Gospels, you will see that Jesus came as the great equalizer, showing that women were to be treated in a manner that was fair, just like men.
Although he picked 12 male apostles. Yeah, you're right. I agree.
But there were women with
There were
him.
some
He did,
female disciples.
again,
I
a product of
just
his time, but who hung out with them,
There's two women in the mix.
Hey, I'm the one who is saying it's time for us to acknowledge that
Yeah.
we need to forthrightly say that the Bible speaks. I mean, I'll give you another good bias. When Paul tells a slave, "Now look, I know you don't like your slavery, but you need to go back because slaves be submissive to your master. Poppycock balderdash."
Wow. Well, hold on. Let me spell that.
tell us how you really
Hold
feel.
on. Oh, I'm sorry. GP didn't. I'm sorry. Go ahead, GP.
No, I was just I don't want to echo what anyone has said, but the implicit and outright degrading that I see of women. I mean, when you hear lyrics in songs and you hear how women are objectified, like, it's bad. Even though we've come a long way, we have a long ways to go. And when I think about my 10-month-old girl and the world that she has to grow up in, like Pat, I'm just like, oh my goodness, what am I to do? Like, it's bad. Like, how we treat women is ungodly. It's terrible.
Still.
Say when your daughter's 14, you'll be reading this text to her though. I suffer a woman that said, trust me.
Oh, Lord. Okay, so we're talking about implicit bias, and we're there's several different aspects that we're going to be discussing this evening, but I wanted to make sure we're all on the same page in terms of implicit bias. So, looking at a definition, it's any unconsciously held set of associations with a social group. And that can result in the attribution of particular qualities of all individuals from that group. So when you think of women, and since we're talking about women in the workplace and women in the church, what do you think? And Dara, I guess I'll start with you. What do you think are some of the biases that we as women face when it comes to work? If a woman's in the workplace, what can you expect? What do you think people put on her? She has to be what?
Well, what people say is we're more dramatic or emotional.
Mm-hmm.
That we're weaker, that we are not leaders, we're followers, that we are not as smart or as intelligent as men. Those are some of the stereotypes that are there, or some of the biases when we look at females. And then when you add Black females, if you have braids, you're more ghetto, things like that we get in the workplace.
Are you guys laughing at this?
No,
it just so happens that both of the ladies on the screen have braids.
No, but that's what's said. I've had a Caucasian conference official tell me that I might want to take my braids out of my hair.
Because
if I wanted to advance. And
wow.
Wow.
Okay.
Socially acceptable. Yeah.
And what is this person's name?
Yeah.
Which conference?
Yeah.
and I'm going to tell you, they were not being.
They're being helpful.
They thought they were being helpful. Absolutely.
And in the definition, Latasha, you said unconscious.
Yeah.
It's something that you have, but you don't even know that you're saying it, that it's actually wrong. And I can tell you the reason why it was an uncomfortable giggle, by the way. When seriously, I mean, I'm drinking here and you said braids, and I'm thinking, what? That's like the norm, or better yet, let me answer that question for you that maybe people will have a problem with. I could wear what I want to work. Pat Graham could wear what he wants to work. I come in sweats.
Even braids?
Well, if it could hook on to the back, then that's cool. But I wanted to add on to that because you were naming quite a few things, Daryl, that you're right about. But no one ever says, what is that Pastor Palmer is wearing? What is that so-and-so is wearing? It's normally you will hear that going to the direction of a woman that you work with. What is that she's wearing? I'm not even talking about tight or something revealing. I'm not even talking about that. Is it appropriate? And it's always in. I've never heard anyone say it to a man, but I've always heard them talking about.
Yeah, women are expected to live based on different standards than men. Like we have to pay more attention to our dress. We have to pay more attention to our grooming. You have to be this in order to be accepted in this space. And I think that's part of the challenge. I mean, you have the biases, coming in, and then you have to also take into account, now I have to be this can't be too loud, can't be too soft. And your mind is just constantly trying to balance out what everyone's expectations of you are. That I always say, somebody said, braid your beard, Pat. And people ask me, and I'm sure Dario, you get this question too, like, how do you manage it all? And I always said, I do not carry that burden. I refuse. Like when I go into the workplace or I am Latasha Hewitt. I am Tasha. I'm a worker. I'm not a female worker. I'm a Black female. Like I don't give myself all these labels that make me feel like I have to hit all these buttons just to be accepted by people. People have to bring to my attention sometimes that their biases towards me. Like that's how my mind has been wired. But I know that's not the case for so many other women. And so, we're here tonight to kind of just bring out some of these things that women are experiencing to maybe help some other women know how to navigate the things that they're experiencing, whether it's at work or at church or working for the church, because, that's a whole nother can of worms. I'm looking at some of the comments. Go ahead, Chuck. Wow.
And we need to keep in mind that, our society reinforces a lot of these biases and these prejudices. our advertising, the advertising that we see, you know, there basically boils down to two kinds of advertising. There is aspirational. You will aspire to be, look, talk.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's affirmational public relations, where we see you where you are instead of, you know, how we want you to be. And so advertisers play this game
Mm-hmm.
with women, the kind of commercials they're in, how they look. And that's a type of programming to the culture. You know, I always thought it was interesting when they advertised the cigarette years ago, and I'm sure you remember Virginia Slims,
Yep.
and they would say, "You've come a long way, baby."
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah,
if you've come a long way, why are you still referring to her as a baby? And that's just always been a question for me. But that's that programming. We see it everywhere. We see it on, you know, in movies. We see it in advertising. We see it in billboards. It's the subliminal language that reinforces this prejudice that we have toward women in general and women leadership.
I have a question. So, and Tasha, you were talking about when you come to work as Tasha. You're not. You need the male, male or female, Jew nor Greek.
I am a female.
Oh, okay.
I'm not thinking. Okay, I'm a female at work. Yeah.
Okay. My question is, because the human brain is actually designed to function based on a certain level of bias, and that is when you see something and you get an experience from it, the brain tells you from now on, regard this thing a certain way. Bias becomes prejudice when you begin to believe that the only way to see something is the way you've experienced it in the past. And prejudice becomes bigotry when you decide to make laws to support your bias. But back to the point, and that is this. Are women and men physiologically, biologically, organically different? And if so, is it acceptable to acknowledge that difference in ways that we, generally speaking, in ways that we regard one another? I mean, we're all co-workers, but let's say that we were all on a boat or a plane and it was going down, and Dariel and Tasha were going to get in the boat, and I said, "Get out of the way. I got to get in that boat." Wouldn't I be viewed differently if I didn't let Tasha and Dariel go? But but it wouldn't be the same if I didn't let, Chuck and GP go. But okay to acknowledge the difference if there is a difference organically and biologically and physiologically between male and females.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I know that male and females have different roles even, and I think I don't think it's and this is I think the misconception a lot of men have. Women aren't trying to, we do have those things like women rule the world and I'm every woman, but women are not trying to replace men. We still appreciate men, and we still love what you all bring to the table. We just want equal appreciation for who we are and what we bring to the table. So, I mean, obviously I would expect a gentleman to make sure that I was, but I don't need it,
Latasha, I'm afraid of water. If I'm afraid of drowning, that's one thing I would be on that boat first. And I would say,
that's because the women, they got
if I could swim. But I have to tell you this, Tally, that's good. I hear where you're going with that. And Latasha had made a statement about work. And I think that we have to wake up to what's going on around us. And I think we talked about this in the green room before, that Latasha, you were an administrative assistant when you came to Allegheny East Conference, under Gary Banks, Claude Harris. I came in as youth director. You were my administrative. You were the administrative assistant to.
Was your property?
Yeah, no, not my. See, you were the. And you see, they even have to change the way we talk. You were the administrative assistant to the youth department when I got there. Not more than a year or so later, you went to community communication, right? Which is side by side, right? There were talks, There were talks when you became communication. It was like, how did she get there when all of us should be there? Other people waiting on it, or whatever the case may be. And that could have been women, a woman's situation. That could have been a male situation. And then, Daryl, I just want you to know that she's not going to say it, but she has been elected, by the way, not chosen, but has been elected as she says coordinator, but she leads out the directors for church ministries. Now, it's a weird situation to sit there. Let's be honest now. It's a weird situation. I'm going to be honest with you. I had to really put something on the seat and be like, yo, you need to go away with that. Get away with that, because no, let's truthfully speaking, you watch somebody in about 4 or 5 years become your
boss.
Yeah.
Supervisor.
Yeah.
She doesn't like to hear that, but the truth is,
but I know what you mean.
No, not even for the show's sake. She represents all of us. Let me just put it that way, right? From somebody who's been in ministry. Now, let me lay it out. For somebody who's been in ministry for 20 years, I should be there, not her. And look where she has come from. And I'm teasing right now because this is really what is happening in the workforce, to be like, hold on a second. How did that happen? We're looking at Daryl. Let me just give me another point now. Daryl, Pastor Hoy, we're friends, right? She's in community services in Baltimore. All of a sudden you turn around, she's in this conference, another conference, as youth director. The first one, am I right? The first
female?
First female. First
Black.
First black youth director, period, right? And then you're saying to yourself, now we sit on boards next to each other. If you don't have your head together, you're going to feel a certain way. If you're not set, you're going to feel a certain way. I had to recognize that these two people who I work with are intelligent intelligent beings that could make great decisions, even better than you in some parts, not everything, but as far as it's concerned. So the reason why I brought that up is because if I don't like that, then I'm going to treat you a certain way. Yeah. I know I went with a whole big soliloquy, but I actually wanted to put something that is on the table that we actually see. How do we deal with something like that? And you have to have a heart change.
Yeah. And you have to recognize it. Like when you feel that feeling, why do I feel
and ask you to tell me to recognize it.
And you have to say, why do I feel that way
with
women? Because it happens with men all the time. And you're conditioned to accept it. Okay, he's only been here this amount of years and he's there.
True.
And we roll with it.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true. But I'm more to the treat. One second, Nick. I'm more to the treatment though, because the story that we all had coming into this whole thing is dealing with the treatment of somebody who's a vice president. Matter of fact, I'll let you go with that, Latasha.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot that we want to dig into. There was a story that we came across from Adventist Today that we really wanted to kind of bring to our UpSet audience because it piqued our interest. One, because there was a story of a woman, her name is Cindy Chamberlain Eastwood. And I think it was at the end of December, she posted something on her Facebook page. She used to be an employee, a vice president for communication, as a matter of fact, for the Central California Conference. And pretty much in her post, she was sharing some of her experience with her supervisor, who was the president of the conference at that time. And pretty much she just was kind of laying out her experience. And because of that post, she was asked to do an interview with Adventist Today. For those who are not familiar with, that's a journal. They also have a YouTube page where they interview individuals, and so you all can check that out. And we will put the link up. I'll add the link there if you want to check it out. And we're not here to this is not a courtroom. We're not trying to argue the case, but we do want to share this scenario that Cindy shared, because I believe that when we hear these stories, you always say if it's one person's story, it's probably 10, 15, 30 other people's experience. And we're the type of show where we want to go there. If somebody's talking about it, we want to bring it to the table. And so just a brief synopsis, and the team's going to kind of help me. Cindy was sharing that when she became the vice president of communications for this conference, of course, she was very excited. She was the first female VP for this conference, and it was a big deal for her. And she worked very well with the president, and things were going well, and she was doing well in her role, and they were meeting and working together. And she started to notice some changes in their interactions. And that mostly came when she decided that she was going to get married. And when she indicated that she was going to get married, the president pretty much forbade her to get married. He says, why do you need to get married? I just want to love on you. I mean, so these are the things. So there's red flags are starting to come out, like what's going on. And he pretty much said he would even tell pastors, because she's working at a conference, she was single, who wanted to date her, no, you can't date her. So he was kind of like blocking all of these things, and she found these things out about them a little later. But when she decided she was going to get married, that's when things shifted in their relationship. And that's when she felt like he was really trying to push her out. And so some of the things he would do is call her into meetings and kind of, in my opinion, from what she was describing, kind of berate her and remind her that, I put you here, and, you're not going to be anything with my support. So it became a very hostile work environment. And you guys can watch it. I'm not going to. And so, of course, she was there for a little while before she decided to leave. Because when I say she decided to leave, she decided to go on FMLA because it was such a hostile work environment. She wasn't being invited to meetings, and she was kind of being excluded from the whole process. And so when she went out, by the time she came back, they had all these like weird rules. Pretty much when she came back, she had to sit in the corner of the office, and they weren't really communicating with her. And it was just like a lot of craziness. So anyway, there was a lot of legal stuff that got. So I know the team has watched this, so I kind of wanted to point out some of the things from the story, from what we experienced from listening to.
May I add something here real quick? Just put a note here. We want to say that all of what we're talking about, imbalance, is based on her testimony.
Right.
And
her account.
Personally, I believe her 100%. But, we have to just be careful to say this is her testimony, because the other parties involved might say, oh, that's not true. She's crazy. That's why she doesn't work here anymore, because he's a nut. And, all kinds of stuff.
And that always happens, unfortunately.
Yeah.
When people
but we have to say alleged. And but I have every reason. I've seen the interview twice, and I have every reason to believe her. It was very heartbreaking, actually.
So there are a few things, we kind of want to point out. And team, I'm going to ask you guys to kind of share what stood out from you from listening to her story. But the thing that I think broke my heart the most about it is that this was a woman who loved what she did. Like, she came to work, and she didn't just say, I'm the VP. She was doing her job. She was making a difference. She was finally feeling fulfilled in her career. But because of her male supervisor, who, in my opinion, kind of viewed her as kind of his little pet or his little toy, like forbidding her to marry. I mean, and I think for her, because people always say, why would you even stay there? Why would you? She loved what she did. She was making a difference. She was enjoying her ministry, and she was, excusing a lot of the behavior because of that. And that's kind of that unfair piece that women deal with, that sometimes people don't realize. Women love their jobs, so they put up with a lot of stuff just so they can continue doing what they feel they're called to do. So that was a tough part about the situation for me, is that women, why do we always have to make a choice between, a male who's put me in this box and what I need to do? And I mean, there's some other things in the story, but guys, what are some of the things for you that stood out about her experience, and kind of help flesh it out for our listeners here?
He was overly controlling and out of line, and he had some serious issues that need to be checked. So I see a comment with Rodney. Could this type of thing be a major concern? Could it be that men don't want women with them in leadership because they don't want to be attracted to them? I don't think it's fair to put that burden or that responsibility on women.
Yeah, that's your fault. That's your problem.
Yeah, every man needs to govern himself accordingly. whether you're married or single, and respect every person who is working with you, regardless of their sex and how they look. But that's a whole other topic. But yeah, he was dead wrong. And, I was pissed when I saw this story.
Right. And you know what? I think for her.
No, I'm sorry. I'm laughing at misunderstood thing, but we can't put that up.
I think for her, it was also the pressure of this happening in the church,
right,
in a high level of governance in the church, in that it's embarrassing, it's hurtful. Folk will get angry. It could have a ripple effect with the individual. And so I'm sure during this horrific experience that she didn't want to bring down the president or bring down the conference or make it a headline news about this conference and how terrible the church is. And I'm sure that just ran in the back of her mind. And she didn't want to make a big fuss over it, although she should have immediately. But I think that's part of her hesitancy. I gathered that from the interview.
Right. And part of it, people say, oh, this happened to you. It wasn't that long ago, but this happened to you. Why are you just putting your story out? Even though, there were some legal things of why are you just putting your story out? And she shared in the interview that she was doing this because she saw that he was going to be presenting to other leaders, I think, for the North American division. And for her, it was like, how can a man like this, like the thought that a man like that would be training future leaders was very unsettling for her. And so she felt like she had to share this because she didn't want that type of thing, kind of being, put up on a pedestal, almost like he's the epitome of what conference president should be, when she knew otherwise. I mean, there was a lot of, from what we hear, there were a lot of undercurrents. People knew about a lot of these things going on. And that was another thing I wanted to bring out. The
silence.
People were aware that these things were going on. People, I'm sure, were in meetings where they saw this behavior and this control and the way he spoke to her. And people, she said, even came up to her and said, well, I have rent to pay. I'm sorry. I can't.
It's crazy.
And I wanted to talk about that co-signing, because you'll hear men say, oh, I believe all women, go for it, I support you. But when they're in the presence of other men who don't feel that same way and vocalize it in the presence of the woman, they're silent. They won't say anything when they see a woman being mistreated, whether it's in the church or, in a conference. They're sitting there and their silence, they think their silence is staying out of it.
Nope.
But your silence is co-signing the behavior. When you don't say something, when you see a woman being mistreated, especially in the church culture. I mean, come on, of all places.
Well, that was my concern. And that is, I used to be an officer in the city where we dealt with those cases every day. And the old saying is true that no matter how flat you make a pancake, it's still going to have two sides. And I don't know what the other person had to say. So, but I do know this: if what she is saying is true, and somebody else observed it, the problem isn't the fact that the gentleman is a schmuck, as this young lady said. That's Yiddish, isn't it? Schmuck is Yiddish, yeah. And the problem is not that he was. The problem is that we have a system that allows for schmuckdom to reign.
Well,
I mean, look, you vote a guy like that out. He shouldn't. We're not talking now simply about prejudice and bias. We're talking about a lack of Christianity.
That's what, yes.
If he did these things,
right?
If they're more than simply her perception, and I wasn't there, I don't know, but
yeah. And he has just to make a point, and his name is Ramiro Cano, and he has since retired from that, so he's no longer at that conference. He did retire. I think, I'm not saying it was shortly after this, but he's no longer
the schmuck golden parachute, huh?
Yeah.
Stop saying that word. It makes me cringe.
Here's what I find interesting.
I'm not going to say schmuck anymore.
Okay.
Especially in the church, with our practices for human resources. Nobody says this is the definition of harassment or bias, and this is what you do to counteract it. They don't say that to people who are and people who are sitting there. And I think part of the problem is we don't have a culture of saying, our human resources or department is going to be the best. I think a lot of conferences don't even have HR directors. And we don't talk about this. We never talk about issues like this at church where it's important to talk about it. I'm loving that you all are having this conversation in 2022, but our church should have been having this conversation years ago.
Right.
And we should have been looking at Jesus's treatment of women and saying, this is the standard for the treatment of women.
Wow.
But we haven't.
That's right.
Yeah, and I want to ask Latasha, what was your take on how the human resources handled this? Because she did mention that in her interview. I think she referred to human resources being involved to some level or some extent.
Yeah, I think she did try to follow the proper protocols by going to HR. I know that there was a time when all of this was happening that he was up for re-election. We all know nominating committee and all of that stuff where people can come in and share. If people ask, I think she was asked to come in and share about her experience, and they assured her that this was confidential. And so she spoke candidly. And then after she did that and went back to work, he called her into his office and said, I know what you said, and quotes back to her exactly everything that she shared in confidence. Okay. So it's like, wow, even when you try to do things the right way, we still have a church culture that allows things to be done. Like the guy who's now using this against her and put her in a position to be a target.
No protection.
No protection. Women have the right for their stories to be heard before the good old boys club. And sometimes women are involved, get to it and spin it in such a way where the woman feels so ostracized and pushed out that they leave because they can't stand the environment, which is really what they want to happen. And so other women see this happen to women. And people say, why didn't they say anything? Because they know that the system is set up against them.
Right.
But before you even get to the system part of it, the key to all of that is that allegedly there's something about her that he liked. There's something about, you got to remember that whole thing. I know we're talking about it on a whole, but in this situation, we're talking about her testimony as far as is concerned. He didn't want her to get married. I don't mean to get back into the stink side of the story, but he didn't want her to get married. He didn't want other people to date her or whichever. So it's almost as though as a VP, this president looked at her as his.
Yeah, it's proper.
And the only reason why he's getting back at her is because the advances that he's subtly, is that the right word? SUBTLE, subtly going around, because he can always say, I didn't say that. The kind of wording that you hear him going around is like he's not really saying to her, take off.
He never touched her, never made any like
something about blonde hair.
He said, I married. He said, I hired a single blonde woman, and
and based on what she said, to me, it was a grooming process that something else later would have happened if she had not gotten married.
Wow.
To me, it was a grooming process.
Yeah. And he didn't want her posting on social media. When she posted on social media that she was in a relationship, he called her into the office and asked her to take it down. That's not what a woman of your stature should be doing, So there's just so many layers of this particular story that I think represents so much of what women expect. And that's the thing, men, sometimes you're not privy to know that you may hear a story here or there, or every year I think we have some social media explosion of some female coming forward about something. So you hear those spurts. But to hear the stories of women who experience these types of things on a daily basis, I think that was one of the reasons why I felt like we should kind of talk about it, because we would love to say, oh, this is uncommon. This is just one situation in one conference that, we don't see this anywhere else. We would love to say that, but we know that that's not the reality.
Well, let me ask, Tasha and Dariel, in your careers, have you experienced anything close to this?
Dariel is shaking her head. I mean, it was almost like one of those bobblehead dolls. She really went for it on that.
I don't know any female in my acquaintance who's
Really?
been in the workforce. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
any female who has not come and said, okay, this is happening to me, and it be
in the church setting,
in the church
Pastor?
and in non-church, but in the church as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, it's
Natasha?
yeah.
No?
Oh, that's my question.
Yes.
You know, and like I said,
No,
I
we
have
don't
to I have to, like I said before, like people have to bring to my attention sometimes.
That's not what he asked you.
He said, have I experienced it? You know,
Yes.
sometimes
Anything like that.
sometimes things happen. Oh, not like this situation. Oh, this particular situation. No, I've not experienced.
But you have experienced bias and
I have experienced bias. I have experienced what I felt like were men who felt that they could talk to me in a certain tone because they were male and I was female. I've experienced that.
I apologize already for that.
Let me clarify. When I said experience that, I did mean bias, not quite her situation, but definitely bias.
Right.
And I don't know any women who haven't experienced bias in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
But
I mean,
go ahead.
No, I mean, I have not had a supervisor because my heart goes out to her. You know, I'm not a VP, but I do work in communication. And a lot of what she described as her job description is what I do. So I understand how you can be so passionate about something. You're enjoying it. You feel like this is what you're supposed to do. And then you have to deal with someone who is looking at you as, you know, their little puppy.
Object.
And kind of demeaning you and kind of letting you know you're nothing without me. Like, it's like she should never have had to deal with that. And he
should have never been a conference president.
Exactly.
Right.
And that was the sad part about it, because she even said that, you know, there were a lot of other things going on in the conference. And he kind of ran it more like a mafia. I think she even said like the Italian mafia.
Let's be honest. We choose people our leaders.
Come on.
Based on our bias. And so we're more likely to choose a man as a conference president than a female. We're more likely to choose someone who is charismatic and more good looking. You know, there's certain things that we have that are our biases, and we get what we get because of our biases.
You're ugly, bro.
I know.
That explains my lack of buoyancy in the denomination. But
and I do want to say a lot of people are saying in the chat that it's, you know, it's definitely prevalent in corporate. You know, a lot of men, especially they almost think that every woman wants to sleep their way to the top. So like they put this out there like I'm your supervisor, you know, I can say what I want, and they know that they have the power to, you know, or they think they have the power to be able to do these kinds of things and get away with it, because you know, like he had everybody in place to the point where her job was given to his son. I believe his son was also employed at the conference. So things were in place where she was just literally pushed out, and her job given. You know, that's
you know how we changed this whole thing, and again, you know, I have to admit to you that I grew up in a church with a male. I had to even text my brothers, do we still have it at our church in Brooklyn? They just said, yes, we do have women elders. You know, when you see the capability, and I hate to start it that way, but when you see the capability, Chuck, of those who we work around, the women that we work around, the number one thing, let me flip to one side. Sometimes it's the women that's bringing down the women, right? Almost crab in the barrel or whichever. I'm saying it because I've actually heard this before.
Right.
I've sat around people where, and I'm using an example where Latasha would say, oh, don't bring Daryl on here. I don't want her in this. No, I'm saying I've heard that before. Hold on.
And I've heard it too. It's a type of jealousy almost.
It is, but on the other side of it, let's take it away from that part of it. There are some women who feel that men are supposed to be in these roles only.
That's
right?
true.
So let's look at that side of it. The other side of it is, if GP and I we're having a conversation, and I say something about a woman, about women, not a woman, but women, period, GP ought to check me.
Yeah.
Right there
Shouldn't
on
laugh.
Private.
no laughing, no carrying on, no this, that, and the other.
Yeah, man.
When you do that, you kind of say, "Oh yeah, I'm good with that." And let me take it off base for real quick. When we used to be at camp pitch, some guys used to tell off-color jokes, at camp, and they'll say to you, "Laugh along, laugh along." I'd be like, "I ain't laughing at that." You know what I'm saying? Or whatever. Once you start to laugh along with it, then you become a part of that type of thing. And so when somebody says now to me or in my presence, a woman shouldn't hold that position, my first question is, hey, so are they capable or are they not capable? And then you will no longer hear from them. It doesn't stop them now. It's just going to stop you.
Well, they don't want to address the truth. And the truth is it boils down to competency and not gender.
Right.
It does.
Right.
And let me tell you, through the ages, and we know this conversation has been just constantly through human history. And us men know that women are as competent as we are, and in many cases, more competent than we are. And when they get the opportunity to prove it, we get a little ticked off. I think about I like it at the military, and I know this used to be a big deal about female pilots. Especially the ones that flew warplanes. These women, when given an opportunity, could fly a warplane around a male pilot any day, and it could really quiet the room, the males in the room, because her gender had nothing to do with her ability to fly that aircraft.
Right.
And yet, we cringe, I'm just saying men in general, we hate the truth, but the truth hurts.
I gotta get Nick, you gotta hear this. I was backing up a woman.
Beg your pardon?
I was backing up. I was agreeing with women in ministry. Right.
Oh, okay. You were standing in support of women in ministry.
Listen, guys, don't chuckle with Nick, okay? I know what I'm talking about. Don't chuckle with
Nick.
You
know him, so you never.
No, I'm just kidding.
Troublemaker.
No, I was, and here was my backup story towards women in ordination when I was fighting for them. I said, and I meant it from my heart. That's why I like the word unconscious. You see what I'm saying? I like how you started by saying unconscious. This is what I said. I said, listen, if God can make a donkey speak, why wouldn't he allow women to preach? And I got a phone call.
That was your illustration?
I was going to say.
Hold on. Wait a minute now. Unconscious, though.
Yeah.
I'm here fighting for it. I used that.
The wrong thing.
And it was, and honestly, someone called me was like, that was the worst thing that you could ever say.
Right. It comes off demeaning.
And it was demeaning. What I'm saying is that, and I really mean this, everybody, you have to have a mind change, and it has to be a constant mind change, because even though I said that, I really meant it. Right? I mean, I really did. Because so to say, the person called me and said, "You mean you think I'm a dog? I'm a dog." I was like, "No, I don't think you are." I said, "Well, you put me on the line of that, being able to speak." Equality is equality right across the board, and you have to be conscious of what you're saying, what you're thinking, and actually change the you. Thank you, Nick, for not embarrassing me. I see it coming. I really see it coming.
No.
There's so much that was said. Like, I want to touch a few of those things. You said about women supporting women. I definitely don't want to lose that part of it, because it breaks my heart. I think more than when men do it. I think it breaks my heart more when women don't support other women in leadership. It's almost like, if there's going to be one, I want it to be me. And if it's not me, I'm going to make sure, you get it, or something like that. I never understood that. I've always been of the mentality, when one wins, we all win. When, you always celebrate your sister, because it's about opening up the opportunities. You're looking at it holistically. Like, I have 2 daughters. I want to see other women win, so that when my daughters come up, they see these women in these positions and know they can do it too. So for me to try to tear down one woman or women, because it's not my spot, or it's not, I'm not the one. I just don't understand that. I really wish we as
I
women
find that it's more age related.
Okay.
So
yes.
I find the older ladies
Mm-hmm.
would be more likely not to want, for example, for me, a female pastor.
Yeah.
And the younger ladies are all for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll have to say, though, even with women who are older, they're more likely to change their opinion and say that they've changed their opinion than the men are. So I think age has a lot to do with it. I think I was telling you all when we were in the green room that I looked at a Gallup poll, and 2017 was the first year that Americans says they don't care what gender their boss is. So 55% of Americans said we don't care if it's a female or a male. And that was the first time in American history, that there wasn't a preference. And even among women, I think it was 28% said they prefer a female boss, 27% said they prefer a male boss, and then 44% said they had no preference. So
that's interesting.
I just want to get paid.
You just
the 44% is thinking about competency and not gender.
Yeah,
sure.
Quick question. So is a man the head of the house? Is the man the ultimate authority of the house?
Here comes the curveball.
What does that have to do with?
Yeah, the household.
What does that have to do with this?
Everything. I mean, and that is this, because what happens is, and Pastor Hoy doesn't understand. Normally, I'm asking questions to set up the opposite point of view, and that is.
I watch. I know.
I know you, Nick.
Yeah.
The point that I'm making is that people bring their values from home to wherever they go.
You're right.
Mm-hmm.
And if I come from a home that says that the ultimate boss by nature is a man, no matter how many different documents you give me, somewhere in the back of my mind, I'm carrying that. And so the question I'm asking is, are we seeing a natural interpolation from the way people view home in the workplace, and particularly in the religious workplace?
I think that's a fair question. I think.
Is it a fair question, Pastor Hoy?
So the thing about implicit bias, it comes from our background, our education, how we grew up. It comes from all of those things, and it's actually like a brain shortcut. And so there's things that we associate. If I said peanut butter, most people would say jelly, and so when we go about teaching, men are the head of the household. And if we don't teach that God created male and female and he created them equally, then there's certain things that are taught. And being the head of the household doesn't mean that females aren't equal. So we confuse a lot of the issues, and therefore we get the product that we get, instead of saying, okay, God created male and female in his image. He created them equally. Man wasn't above women. If we teach those things biblically, then we come out with a different product, but we don't. I think, as Christians, and particularly as Adventist Christians, even though we say we teach the truth, there are some things that we don't teach the truth about.
Oh my goodness! No, listen, close your mouth. Close your mouth, Nick. Close your mouth.
The thing that let's face it, we live in a male dominant world.
We do.
However, when you go through history, you will find, even in the Adventist church, you will find very strong female leadership. In secular society, you've had women, like for instance, just recently of Germany, who was the prime minister of Germany, was a woman. And so in some areas, people see that, women are very competent, can get the job done, regardless of our biases, us men being biased. But at the end of the day, we know we're living in a male dominant society, and the elephant in the room is we don't like having a woman in charge. We just don't like it.
Yeah.
I think it was James Brown who said this is a
It's
man's
a man's
world.
world. Yeah.
It's a man.
But it wouldn't be nothing
Yeah.
without a woman or a girl. Come on now.
Dario waits to get to James Brown to start preaching.
Really quick though, who invited her?
We all did.
Yeah, we all did. Absolutely.
We did.
Good to see you again.
Man, that's awesome.
You know, I think though the conundrum is we don't expect this in the church. We don't expect this, especially in the governing bodies of the church. You would think that on that level there would be, a mindset of equality. But to be honest with you, folks, it ain't that way.
Yep,
it's that way up there too. And I could tell you story of the story of the story because I've worked with some of our NAD partners. I've worked with GC partners. I've seen things in the boardroom. I've seen things in action during projects that clearly points to this male dominant attitude in the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Yeah.
It's there. It's still there. And we have to deal with it.
Hey, Chuck, we got 6 regional conferences, and I'd like to talk about we have 6 regional conference elections that's coming up.
Yep, constituency. Yep.
Constituency meetings that's coming up. And I wonder, I'm not saying it isn't, I've not heard through any grapevine, but think about the amount of women that have the ability to take our conferences to a new level.
Qualified and able.
Yeah.
Well, they can't be elected simply because the vast majority of them have not been ordained long enough. You have to be an ordained person to be a conference president.
Well, here's my and
was Phyllis Ware ordained?
I don't know.
And she was president for a second.
She was.
But here's my point.
She might have been ordained, but you have to be ordained to be a president.
In the Columbia Union, we have that, and also the Mid-America Union. I believe they allow ordination. So we still should see some women in leadership this time around.
We expect, let's take it home. We expect for everyone to be able to respect the vice president of our union, Columbia Union. What's her name?
Celeste
Ryan.
Biden.
We also have Biden. We also have we also have Pastor Nunes, who's now vice president in
Nevada, Utah.
You know, we need to be able to respect them, even as we talk in our circles. It's not just at the top level, but to be able to respect them. We have
Utah has a female president.
Not president. I think she's the
executive secretary.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure if they're VP out there.
She's an officer.
She's an officer out there.
Well, I mean, that's one of the reasons why it needs to be the idea of women not being ordained also limited their ability to serve their church, which is why it needs to be taken up. But let me ask another theological question as we prepare to close.
Ask Daryl.
In the Unitarian Church, they have relinquished the use of masculine gender when referring to the deity, because they say it creates an undue bias on the part of believers. So it's instead of our Father which art in heaven, it's our God who is in heaven. Does the concept of God being male, does that lend itself to a justification for bias?
What is the gender of God? Yeah,
I mean, everybody knows that the gender of God is that he is a man, people will say, even though God says that God is a spirit, and last I checked, spirit has no gender.
And both man and woman were made in his image, right?
In his image, yeah. I mean, and the concept, and the Elohim is actually of feminine root.
That's right.
And so,
I mean,
I failed enough Hebrew to know that.
That's right. But I sure got beat up at a church for that. You know what? I think we, this is the reason why salvation is beautiful. I think this is the reason why grace is beautiful, because what we're going to experience in the kingdom, we're going to recognize that we have been off the whole time. I mean, and that's why I look at it. I have to look at it that way. I have bumped into people who have gone through trauma based on the name male and father. How do you serve someone that you're calling father when when you had trauma with yours? You know what I'm saying? And to really flip it back, that's why there needs to be change. Like how you talked about it, Nick, just now. If your household is male dominant, how do you go to the workplace? I don't care if it's McDonald's. I don't care if it's Burger King. I don't care if it's Fortune 500 or it's in the church. How do you come out and say, no, everyone is equal? And I think Justin said it early enough, not necessarily equal. What did you say, Justin?
Equity, not just equality.
And I think it's something that we just need, even biblically, we need to think through that. We need to think through that. Even the way we preach and how we preach and what we say from the pulpit needs to change.
And that's part of the solution, is recognizing there is a bias and then saying, oh, well, what do I do to change the bias? Right. If we recognize the bias and we just say there is a bias and we don't do anything, we perpetuate it.
Sure.
But when we say there is a bias and I'm first going to change myself, and then I'm going to help other people change and recognize the bias and change, then we're doing something.
Right. And taking it a step further, not just saying it in the pulpits and saying it in public forums, but also saying it in those private conversations, in those meetings where these things are happening, because I see that happen a lot. People know what to say when people are watching and there's an audience. But then when they go into the corners, can you believe they're trying to get more female pastors? It's like, wow. Like, so you're really just saying what you know is socially acceptable, but are you really taking the time to say you support? I've heard so many pastors, even at Pelk, when we pray for the women and the women come down to the front and the pastors come up behind, and they, put their hands up, in support. I have to say, sometimes I say, yeah, you're doing this in this public forum, but when it really comes time, when you're really in those boardrooms and you're in those side conversations and it's really time to speak up, are you willing to do it then? Are you willing to do it in a room where people don't agree with it? That's when, to me, it matters the most. That's when we can
Latasha, I know that the plane is landing, but I also don't like that we set up, and I've been in meetings where we said we have to choose a woman.
Yes, and that's something Rodney was asking. We're trying to balance things out. So now we just pick a woman. Yeah, just pick a woman.
No, there's enough. Our problem is that we're not doing the research to find the women, or to say that, or when it comes up and you say, hey, this person is capable, then we say to ourselves, okay, let's put them there, because then we won't get clowned later on social media for not putting somebody there. Nah, we got women who. Go ahead, Nick. I'm sorry.
No, I think sometimes we do have to choose a woman. I think
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. I agree. I'm saying not for status, not for
not to say we pick a woman.
Yeah, not as a token.
Yeah,
right. That's what I mean. That's what I meant. That's what I meant.
So when someone calls me and they say, Dario, who can you recommend to speak for this event?
Yeah,
I'm automatically gonna throw out the names of 3 or 4 women.
Yeah, because I know you hadn't mentioned my name for any of those.
She ain't mentioned mine either.
Not one.
Well,
they don't have these opportunities.
They don't have,
because my male colleagues are gonna mostly throw out male names,
right?
Yeah, and so I automatically, I just remember a pastor called me and they were like, "Who can you recommend?" And when I threw out women's names, he began to rethink his perspective, and he was just like, wow, that's awesome that you all network like that. And it tells me I need to do something different.
That's right.
Well, my final word is that if we don't deal with the administrations at the top of all of our organizations, institutionally, we're still going to struggle with this, because we have men who are in top positions that can make decisions and control the narrative because of their own bias. And until we address it at that level, we're still going to have this conversation.
Absolutely.
I think we have a general conference president who has a position on this. And it's been written about and it's been commented on many times. It's not that we're trying to poke, at our General Conference president, but there have been some controversial issues because of his position on the female role in this church. So until we start looking at it at the top, it's still going to be a conversation we're going to have for a while.
I think we got to look at it at all levels, top, middle, bottom, all levels. Personally, I'm blessed to have colleagues like a Pat Graham or Ron Williams. I'm grateful to have colleagues like Nick Talaferro, who would call me and say, "Hey, are you interested in, an associate pastor position?" I'm blessed to have those types of colleagues, but I'm even, I realize even more, it's helping other people understand, speaking when you can speak, and when women get in those leadership positions, actually supporting them, actually saying and affirming what they're doing.
Right.
Absolutely. It goes a long
And
way.
before we wrap up, can we take the time just to affirm Tasha and Darielle Pastor Hoy and Latasha Hewitt for the amazing work that they've done and for how God has used them throughout their ministries. And we know that God will do so much more with you all in the future. So if you didn't hear it this month, you are appreciated and you are needed. You are needed, and we appreciate you. So thank you all for who you are and what you've done.
I'm not doing that.
Thanks,
I got to work with them. I'm not doing it. You ever been in a meeting with them? I agree, GP. I agree.
I spend so much time working with women in leadership now that it almost seems unnatural if I go into a room and there aren't women leading.
Yeah.
I mean, the person who owns my radio station is female. My program director is female. The station manager is female. When I was working in city government, my immediate reporting upline was female. It's natural,
Yeah. That's great.
I don't care, male, female. I'm gonna give somebody a hard time. Somebody.
Nick, was that your "I have black friends" spiel?
But no, that's great. And like I start off by saying, I appreciate working with my male counterparts. I see you all as my counterpart. You know what I mean? Like, I don't say this is my male. Yeah. And I appreciate you all creating an environment where I don't feel like the fact that I'm female is being highlighted over what I'm contributing to a discussion or what I'm contributing to what I do. And I appreciate, I also can say I'm fortunate enough to be in an environment where I don't experience what Cindy experienced, but that doesn't mean that I still don't want to speak for other women who may be going through those things and don't have a platform to bring these things to the forefront. And so I appreciate you all being a part of this discussion so that we can hopefully help other women who experience this and are maybe going through this situation right now and just need some support to know that they're not alone.
Yeah. And before we wrap up, I think I'm taking over, but I would love for Darielle and Tasha to speak to the heart of some young lady or older lady who is going through a tough time right now on their job or in their church, and maybe they're suffering in silence. Like, what encouragement can you give to them right now?
Play the organ music, Pat.
I thought I was getting ready to come with it, but it's okay.
I always say that God sees and God hears and God acts and He's moving, and to really, number one, trust God. Number two, there is an HR department. And so if there is an HR department, sometimes we are less likely to say anything because we don't want to ruffle the feathers. We won't want to, throw a rock in the water. But if God put you where you are and you are doing your work and you're doing what you're supposed to do, then speak up for yourself and speak up for others, so that and follow the process. Follow the process with HR, and prayerfully things will work out.
Yeah. And just to add on to that, I totally agree with everything you just said. I'd say to that woman, first of all, you're enough. God made you.
Amen.
You are enough. He gave you those gifts and those talents to be used. And even though sometimes you may not feel that they're appreciated, or maybe that they're undermined or undervalued because you're a female, please don't use that as an excuse to dim your light. You have something that you have to offer, and the world needs it. Don't let anything stop you from walking in your God-given purpose. Everything we do as women, as people, is what we do to God. So don't let any man, male or female, stop you from walking in your purpose, and let God be your guide. You are enough.
Amen.
Amen.
All right. Thank you for that.
There were quite a few that asked, where can we find this interview? And
I think it was put up.
Yeah, I put the link in the chat. I'll try to do it again so that I don't think it was a link. You may have to copy and paste it. So but yeah.
Is that the link directly to the YouTube, or
yes,
to
YouTube?
Adventist Today? Okay.
Yeah, it was to.
So for those of you that are listening or whatever, that can't, if you just go to the website of Adventist Today,
you will see this.
.org. And they also, her interview is on their YouTube channel.
Right.
And you'll get to hear it. It's we've talked about it, but it's nothing like hearing her testimony.
Yes.
All right.
It's
going to get you mad now. So people like Raylene and Misunderstood, please don't watch it until you have your first cup of postum.
Oh, and this is another bit of advice, because we definitely want to be practical about things as well, and so document things when they happen. So should it come to the point of litigation or anything, you have your facts in order, because it can get tricky. Yeah. All right, guys, we went a little over this.
Yeah, we did.
Right. That's what happens when we haven't been live for a little while.
I really think it's because Pastor Hoy was on that. Why he went over another.
Watch your mouth, Pat. Watch your mouth.
I enjoyed it.
No, we really appreciate you coming on. It was
thank you.
Great to have you here with us.
I enjoy each week. Even if I can't watch it live, I catch the replay. So I'm a big fan of UpSet, and just know that I love you. All are relevant. You have fun, and you keep it real.
Yeah, and you have a lot of courage to come on with us, because we can be a real gang here.
I try to keep them serious and on point, but it's difficult. It's challenging.
Yeah, right. We all know it. Yeah. But anyway, guys, as always, we want to invite you to write us. Maybe we touched on something that you want us to expound on. And remember, we are reading your emails. There may be a delay sometimes in response, but we are reading them. We're discussing them. And we will write you back. Those who've written us in the past, we will write you back. So feel free, reach out, upset@aecsda.com. As always, we thank you for tuning in. For women, for men, and even we have to provide a little bit more balance on this too. I think that's what Anthony's saying.
Mercy.
Yeah.
Mercy.
Yeah, next time you might excuse one of you guys. No, I was playing.
Hey, Anthony, go ahead and why don't you just go ahead and write it an email instead of putting it on Front Street.
Email us.
No, that's cool. All right, guys, it's been a great show. Thank you all, especially the audience. We appreciate the dialogue, and the chat was great to hear from you, even though we didn't get to all the comments. Thank you for being with us this evening. We hope you all have a wonderful week. We'll see you back here next Sunday, 6 p.m. Take care, everybody.
Be blessed, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Take care.